start the countdown. So it's nearly time for liftoff. Ethereum has been sitting on the launch pad for quite some time. We didn't know when ultimately its version 2.0 would be launched. As of now, we do. True to fashion though, the launch of the merge is going to be a little bit complicated, and we wouldn't have it any other way, ultimately, would we? So when is it? What is it? How is it? We're going to answer all of those questions in just a second, but perhaps the biggest question of all is, could something still go wrong? Well, absolutely we could, and we'll be telling you why. We're also going to be taking a closer look at civic tech's role in blockchain, debate about the role, and its supposed dangers of crypto has never been more fierce. So why is that? Are rule makers out of touch? And what opportunities does it potentially present? Ahead of Phil's Singapore 22, we're going to be talking to an expert from Filecoin Foundation about what to make of all of that. So, it's almost here. The merge.
What did you say?
Yes, you heard that right. The merge is almost here. It is official. The biggest thing to happen in crypto for years, possibly ever, has been confirmed at the start of September. Ethereum's developers have said the merge is scheduled for the network's mainnet, but, yes, of course, there's a but. Don't get too excited just yet. It's going to be a two-step process. It's not all set in stone. Step one is the Bellatrix upgrade. Yep, we're still wrapping our heads around that name, but this is the part that we are certain on. It's been locked in for September the 6th. Remember that date. The final subsequent step to completing the transition is then called Paris. That will be triggered when a specific total difficulty value for mining the blockchain is hit. And that could happen anytime between September 10th and September 20th. Ethereum's developers are very clearly aware of the anticipation around the merge. Of course, they have been posting links to two different sites which have been offering up-to-date predictions on when Paris will take place. But can we be sure it will all go smoothly? Could those pushing for a proof of work split, for instance, still put a spanner in the works? Forecast Lachlan Keller takes a look for us.
Ethereum's announcement is pretty definitive, but like any sort of technology rollout, things could still change. So how likely is it that it'll go to schedule? Jonathan Miller of crypto exchange Kraken is pretty optimistic.
Well, it's locked in on the block. We've got, I'm not going to read the number of zeros. I'm not going to put money on it going ahead, but you know, this is as close as we've ever been, and I'm pretty certain that the probability is quite high here that we'll see the merge occur.
Saving energy has often been highlighted as a key advantage for the move away from proof of work, but what other factors are involved, and how will we know if it's been a success?
Proof of work has been argued to be energy intensive, but also there's limiting factors on the scalability of the network. Now, will those limiting factors be solved by the merge? There are people who argue that they won't, and that will still require layer 2 solutions on top. This is a multi-layered, blockchain is not simple. It's a multi-leveled, tech stack now, and I think that will remain irrespective of whether we are mining with proof of work or proof of stake. The proof of stake networks, exist. There are alternatives. There'll still be debate as to which is a stronger, which is more beneficial. But I think that the fundamental question will be, how many new projects and how many people will be using the networks.
Ben Caseland of AAX agrees that developers are a vital factor in the success of the merge.
In the end, it comes down, do we trust the developers? I mean, Ethereum has a very strong developer community. The majority of development is happening on Ethereum. So, the question is really, do we trust the developers? Do we think that there is that they have the capabilities to bring it forward? Generally, I think Ethereum is quite an impressive thing, but overall, there are many protocols that are quite impressive. Except for Bitcoin, I would say everything else, including Ethereum, is still in the experimental phase. And even Vitalik Buterin has admitted that and said, in the end, it's still an experiment.
The crypto world isn't 100% behind the change either, with former crypto miner Chandler Guo pushing hard for a proof-of-work fork. Guo's reasoning is that many miners will lose their income as the specific computer equipment they operate will be rendered useless. But was it inevitable that someone proposed a fork?
Forks are normal. In fact, that's how open source software works. We've seen forks of Ethereum in the past. There's a very famous one. And every time that there is an upgrade on open source software, there's debate. This is the beauty of open source software. We've seen it in Bitcoin. We've seen it in other chains. I think when it's a high profile chain like Ethereum, perhaps the stakes are higher than some newer blockchains out there, but this is not unusual.
Miller reckons miners aren't the only ones who might be interested in a fork. He says some developers who have built dApps on top of the current stack want it to happen as well.
Does the merge solve for every single use case at the moment? Some of the use cases, the merge won't necessarily improve, the transaction throughput depending on the type of dApp you're talking about. So, adoption of the underlying new chain, making use of that, and fundamentally the layer twos have to shift over here. This is a big complex system. You can't. I think people have likened it to changing engines mid-flight. Quite an undertaking. We're going to see different protocols, move across, or potentially even pause their offerings. It's really unknown. There's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be turbulence, so to speak. So, I think that there's a good chance that you'll see some platforms decide to stick to the existing framework because they know that it works for them. That doesn't mean that they won't, move their systems over to the proof of stake network later.
But will a fork have an impact on the proof of stake chain?
I would say no, because a hard fork will create a new chain, but would not migrate existing users. For example, Ethereum Classic was the original Ethereum, but users collectively, or at least the majority, decided that the new chain was the only one that they would use. So today, ETH Classic still exists. I mean, we've seen quite some activity over the past few weeks, I would say. It still exists, and there are still miners, but there are significantly less users on that chain, right? So, with that much anticipation building for Ethereum POS, unless the miners in question can wreck the reputation of the current ETH network by a major hack, a double spend, or something else that would convert other validators, they won't be able to stop the merge. Instead, they will fork a chain with a code exactly like Ethereum and continue mining, but they will not see the profits go anywhere in the long term at least.
Miller says that while he thinks a new proof-of-work Ethereum chain isn't necessary, there's a possibility that some unexpected innovation could come as a result of the merge, and that would be a good thing. As for how markets are reacting, Ethereum was up 3.2% in the 24 hours to 1 p.m. Hong Kong time today. Wei Zhou, of Philippines-based crypto platform coins.ph, says he expects more movement to follow the merge.
A lot of times it takes a little bit of time for people to sort of see the event happening in real time, and then sort of eventually for the narrative to catch up with what's happened with the news, and then for sort of capital to actually getting really deployed into this asset.
I'm Lachlan Keller, Forkast.
Civic tech. It's not necessarily a phrase that springs to mind when you think about blockchain, really, is it? But it might just be one of the most important debates about blockchain's usage right now. Let's talk about why with Clara Zhao, who's founding officer and director at the Filecoin Foundation. Clara, thanks for talking to us. Listen, you've got an extensive background of working closely with governing, rule-making bodies from a lot of different places. Why did you move away from that? Why get involved in what the Filecoin Foundation is doing?
Yeah, I would say there's actually more alike than different between the two worlds. So much of what happens in civic tech and civic innovation is very much understanding governance for access to information by people, and it's no different in what we're doing at the foundation, where we're trying to think about preserving humanity's most important information, but also making sure that everyone around the world can actually access digital assets that they deserve to access this democracy. And in fact, there's a lot of connective tissue still that we're doing that is overlapping the two worlds, right? So when people today think about issues like open data, they forget that data actually isn't truly open, even if they belong to governments, if they have the chance of being manipulated. This happens a lot overseas if there's authoritarian regimes where citizens may not actually be able to trust the government that they're part of. And this is an issue that over the last decade, we've seen so many countries face over what is really data integrity. And so a lot of what we're trying to do right now is really preserve public information like open data so that citizens can always access it at any point in time. So I think there's actually so much more overlap than differences, even though I think to outside observers, the two worlds might seem completely separate at first.
Can you tell us then about where civic tech fits into blockchain, how important it is to it? Because I think a lot of people will struggle to see the applications of it beyond investing in cryptocurrencies, for instance.
The role of a lot of crypto foundations today is they are trying to preserve the democratized access and representation among all players in the network. We also have seen a lot of people actually use a lot of what is happening in crypto for civic activism, right? Like Constitution DAO is a great example where people very much wanted something like the Constitution to have co-ownership in the hands of multiple versus necessarily one singular owner. And so there's a lot of questions around who owns power, who has access to power. Should it be split among a community, or should it be necessarily centralized in the hands of a few? And that happens not only in places like Congress, but also in the web today. Often we don't have necessarily the diverse representation in both government, but also in Web3, I argue, that way that we talk about it. We still have a lot of representation from Western countries, and that's something that we're trying to do at the foundation, is really think about diversity at large, hiring from across different continents, but also engaging different communities in areas all around the world, because we can't build a decentralized file storage network without different people all around the world coming together and participating with us.
And let's talk about Phil Singapore 22. It's coming up shortly. How vital is it that conversations about things like civic tech are taking place in these sorts of environments, and in Asia in particular? And what's unique about it that's vital to the broader conversations that are happening across the globe?
Yeah, from a standpoint of just diversity, we obviously know a lot of blockchain and crypto mining happens in Asia. There's a lot of investors there. Asia has always been very early in the blockchain train. I think for us, our goal with this conference is really bridging East with West, right? And so there's a lot of innovation that's happening in Asia that we want to be able to be there to capture, but vice versa, we would love to be able to bring some of the values that we have in our ecosystem over. And we also have a huge community of existing Filecoin partners and supporters that are in Asia that we want to show up for. There's definitely some challenges, right? Asia is so diverse that even with this conference, we're thinking about making sure everyone can access and even understand what is being said, because we're going to draw partners from all around the world. But we're going to also have such a diversity of different side events. We have over 20 side events taking place, and this is our biggest Asia gathering in real life since our network launch.
All right, thanks for that, Clara. That was Clara Tao from the Filecoin Foundation. We'll be hearing a lot more from Clara and others at the organization as we get closer to Phil Singapore 22. That kicks off on September 26th. You can watch it all right here on Forkast. So that is it though from us for this episode. Like and subscribe to this video. Click the notification bell below for more content like it, and let us know your thoughts on what's happening in the comments.